You're listening to the Two Writers Walk Into a Bar podcast. In every episode, our goal is to help, inspire, and celebrate authors' journey to publication by reading and critiquing query letters, then tackle a writing topic we hope you can find helpful. Welcome to our first episode of Two Writers Walk Into a Bar podcast. I'm Angela.
I'm Ken.
And we're the hosts. So we are today we're going to talk about we have a topic that we want to tackle later, but we're going to read each other's query letters to help you guys, to help you get an idea of how we query and just kind of help each other. But before we get into that, how was your writing week, Ken? Did you do?
It was long. It was a
was
long week. I'm so close to the end that I'm like, I want to hit the end so badly, but I'm just not getting there. The story will not allow it to get to the end. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just like, it keeps growing and growing. Like, I'm over 100,000 words now, and
my gosh!
And
maybe you need to do like a trilogy or a duology.
Oh, it's definitely a trilogy, but this one just begs for me to keep writing. Like I'm like, oh, I'm gonna end it here. I'm gonna end it here, and then I'm like, no, these characters need this, and these characters need that, and it's gonna blow up. It's gonna end up being 120 plus, I think, by the end.
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a lot.
Yeah.
I can see where you want to hurry up and be done so you can go on to the next story. Well, I'm still editing mine. I didn't get a lot editing done this week. I was pretty busy at work and pretty exhausted by the time I got home. I was just beat. But I still have some editing to do. And I'm eager to jump on my next story. I'm kind of like, I really want to like plot out the beats and like get it going, but I'm like just kind of holding off. I'm like, no, I got to edit this one and get it to Ken so he can critique it for me.
Absolutely. I am so in your shoes. I want to be done so bad.
Yeah. I know, it's exciting, but I will say they did start querying this
Nice.
book already. I sent it out to a few agents, and you know how it is. If you guys are querying, it takes such a long time to get a response. So I started, I think like a couple weeks ago, or about a week ago, about a week ago. So it could be another couple weeks before I get either a decline or, hopefully a full request.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it takes forever. They move glacial.
They do.
Industry,
I know. You know what? I often think about like how awesome it would have been if I would have done this like maybe 15 years ago. Probably would have been, agented by now. I feel like the last 15, 20 years, the agents are just swamped with so many people wanting to become writers.
Yeah, 2020, a lot of people had a lot of time
yes.
They wrote like crazy. So
I know, I did.
Dealing with the backlash of that. Yeah, me too.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
So I'm actually going to be critiquing Ken's query letter today on his book that he's writing. So the way this is going to work is we are going to redact the titles just for like everyone's privacy, right? We're not going to put out the title of your book. And of course, we will redact any like personal information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and read it first. And then I'm going to say how many words are in his query letter. And then I will explain why that's important. So excuse me while I put on my glasses. Okay, so it says here, Dear Agent, I'm seeking representation for my epic fantasy, Redacted. The manuscript is complete at 120,000 words. I'm probably going to mess up these names, so I apologize in advance.
No worries.
Pharania is a tale of two histories. The first, when the kings of old ruled the land in justice and the rights of its citizens were as commonplace as the speckled trout that swam the Kazos River. The second is a much darker tale, one of the people fleeing beasts from the depths of Pharania, seeking refuge 1,000 feet above the ground in the cradle of the sakura dendrons, trees not only known for their beauty, but for their unfathomable size. Jin Taohoon hides his own disability well. Speaking words and the uncontrollable movement of his arm and neck have plagued him since he was 9. He is an ex-soldier, ex-thief, an ex-ardent disciple of the Church of the Sun who has awoken to the lies and depravity of the church and their pseudo-gods. The Solamistas, an ancient order of knights born from the shards of a dead star. The Solamistas carry out acts to cleanse the survivors' bloodlines through mass executions, killing anyone with physical or mental ailments from deformities down to a simple stutter that must be cleansed under the Solamistas' blades. A mysterious stranger leads Jin to an underground compound where he finds an ancient council of strange fungal humanoids. They grant him one of their children, a young sporling named Paulo, that alters his body to absorb the spores from the strange cavern, giving him superhuman strength, speed, and the ability to fly for short distances, among other abilities. With his newfound powers and a mission to find an ancient orb, he rescues the poor souls from the executioner's block and forms an underground crew set on ending the church's atrocities once and for all. Jin learns he is one of the 3 prophesied echo speakers and is tasked with finding the remaining 2 in a country of millions. He must find the Nava Ara, an ancient orb that can control the monstrosities that live on the land below, and carry out his plan to rid Ferrania of the church and all its supporters while balancing the differing personalities he's brought onto his crew. Jin must lead the fight for freedom against unfathomable odds and try not to condemn the sanctuary among the trees to ash in the process. Comparable titles: The Magic System and Group Dynamics of the Mistborn Trilogy by Brandon Sanderson. The Friendship Between Locke and Jean in the Gentleman Bastards Trilogy by Scott Lynch. The Arc of Rin and her struggle with anger and becoming a leader, The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. My flash fiction story, Tensions Edge, was published in Flash Fiction Magazine on February 6, 2023. My short story, 1 in 15 More, is scheduled for publication in the West of Dodge anthology in 2023. My novelette, The Spider of Marsh Hall, was a finalist and earned an honorary mention from Allegory magazine. I currently work as a security guard and host the 2 Writers Walk Into a Bar podcast with my critique partner, Angela Reese. I live in Utah with my 3 children and a rambunctious Labrador named Indiana. Okay, so this comes in at 544 words. Which is, I kind of feel it's a little long, but I think because it's an epic fantasy, kind of works.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that I know from taking classes is you want to break down your query into 3 different paragraphs. So, this was a little lengthy, it's fine. And we have a lot of world building and sort of history.
Yeah.
Right, as you're trying to explain the world, right, and how it works,
Yeah.
which I freaking love. And by the way, if you guys, I've already started reading this, and it's such a fantastic book. It really is amazing. I love it. I can't wait. I know it's going to get published. So I just want to say, like, you did a good job by introducing your main character, which is Jin Calhoun. Am I saying that right?
Yep,
Okay.
Jin Calhoun.
Okay, good. We love that. Okay, so he hides his own disability well. And you kind of go into a little bit of his backstory.
Yeah.
I think what I would change is maybe go into what does he want more than anything? What is it that Jin wants?
Yeah.
And then why and what's getting in the way of him getting what he wants? Which I could tell from reading this is probably the church. The Solamistas?
Solamistas, yeah.
Solamistas.
Yeah, you got it the first time.
Yeah. Okay, great. So my recommendation would probably be the first paragraph where you talk about the world building and the tale of 2 histories. I would try to condense that down to as quickly at like maybe 1 to 2 sentences. Just kind of like make it simple. One of the best examples of that is if you read the back blurb of the Hunger Games. She does an incredible job. Suzanne, oh my God, I can't remember her last name. Collins. Suzanne Collins.
Yeah.
It's literally like 1 sentence about this dystopian world, and you get it immediate. It's sharp. It's like right on.
Yeah,
And I think you could do that with the first paragraph. It's just like real
for
quick.
sure.
This is what the world. This is who's ruling this world, right? And then go into like what does Jin want, how he's a part of that world, and we get a clear picture that the church is definitely in the way of that. And then you want to introduce the main conflict. So I'm not sure what the conflict is in this one other than fighting the church.
The conflict is well, it's between the church and Jin, but it's
Okay.
because they're killing disabled people basically, anybody with any
Okay.
disabilities. That's the main conflict, and
Okay.
he's trying to
Yeah.
stop that basically. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's literally up to Jin to do it, right? It's like it's on
Yeah.
him. He's like the prophesied chosen one, kind of
Yeah.
maybe.
Kind of the chosen one a little bit. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
3 echo speakers, so yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So I would go into more of like what that main conflict is and why he has to tackle that.
Yeah.
Because obviously as the main character. And then I like the end how you say Jin must lead the fight for freedom against unfathomable odds and try not to condemn the sanctuary um, among the trees to ash in the process. Um, so I would probably focus more like what's the high stake for him? Is that a world that feels like it's a stake for the world that you created?
Yeah.
So I would say maybe try to do a stake that's for like a personal stake for Jin. What's
Yeah.
going to happen to him if he doesn't do what he's supposed to do? Like
Yeah.
what's going to happen? So we know right away what that stake is. Because the stakes are kind of like what we're all waiting for, right?
Yeah.
Like we want to know, like, is this, and are they gonna be able to do it or not?
For sure.
Type of
Yeah.
thing. I love the comparable titles. One of the cool things that you did, which I love, is that you sort of took pieces of your story, like you said, the magic system and the group dynamics of the Mistborn trilogy by Brandon Sanderson. That's perfect. I love
Yeah.
that. Fantastic. And I know that like a lot of agents, they kind of look for that too because they could take those bits and pieces to be able to sort of blend it and then understand like where your story is going.
Yeah,
So I
for
love
sure.
that. And then of course we love that you all your publications already. That's perfect. If you guys do have if you do have publication, definitely add that to your query letter, but not your if you've self-published, unless I believe agents only look for if you've sold over like 20,000 copies or something like that. So if you're a self-published author or if you've self-published something in the past, um, I wouldn't even mention it if it didn't sell well. But
Fair enough.
Ken has you have some publications that are in magazines, which is really cool. So I feel like that definitely helps and sees like you already have interest. You have interest, people are kind of reading your work. So I think that's fantastic.
For sure.
My other thing that I would say is, and I know you're shooting for 120,000 words. As a debut author, we kind of want to keep it like 100,000 or less.
Yeah. I don't know if that's gonna be
I know
possible.
that. Yeah, I know. Well, I will say that I attended a class with an agent. She was like, if it is over 100,000, then don't put the word count.
Yeah.
Because usually it's like if it's too high of a count, it's a pass because it's too hard for them. It's too expensive
Yeah.
to publish,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
To
yeah.
print.
Oh,
So
yeah,
as a
I'm
debut
aware.
author,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. I know you are. I just want to make sure our listeners know too. And like I know Ken is gonna edit it down. I know you're gonna do it, Ken. I know
Uh,
you're gonna do it. You got
we'll see.
this.
We'll see.
You got this.
We'll
It's an
see.
incredible story. The world building is fantastic. And not to mention, and you can kind of see here what I love too in your query letter, is I can see your writing style. I can
Yeah.
see how the story is gonna read by the way that you wrote the query letter. So, all in all, I would say this is good. I would say maybe focus on the main conflict. Just kind of pare down the world building a little bit. You
Yeah.
can. I know you can. Focus on the main conflict and then really show the stakes. Like, what is at stake here for your character if he fails?
Yeah.
So that way, there's like that sense of urgency, like, oh, I got to read this because I need to know.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So what do you, what do you think so far?
No, it's a good critique. It's definitely wasn't written this afternoon on my front porch with a cigar. Yes, it's rough. It's super rough. It definitely needs to be pared down. But no, your ideas were great. And definitely would be a good idea to pare it down. It's definitely too long.
It's
Um,
good. I mean, you got some good stuff in here. I think you just have extra stuff that
yeah,
probably, as the agent, that you really want to hook your agent, right? Because
yeah.
the agent is reading like hundreds of queries, right? They're reading
Oh
so
yeah,
many, and you have their attention for just a few seconds.
yep.
So, also the other thing that I would say is I would move your comparable titles to the top,
Okay,
so you could say, like, the name of your story is, the magic system and group dynamics of, so that the agent, before they start reading the query, they're kind of getting an idea of what the story is about. Like, they're
yeah,
having like a little bit of a glimpse, and then go into the query, and then of course end it with your personal bio, like your publications and
for
hosting
sure.
this podcast. But yeah, it's really good. I, for one, can't wait to buy it.
Yeah,
It's
I
gonna be
can't
great.
wait for it to be out.
I'm
Hopefully,
sure.
yeah. Crossing my fingers.
Oh yeah, it's gonna happen for sure. I feel it. I
Yeah, I
feel
hope
like,
so.
I mean, I have I've read that a lot of agents say that they, when they sign a writer, it's usually around their fourth and fifth book,
Yeah, this is
because
the
you've
fifth,
you
so
right, because you've learned so much, you've come so far, and you understand storytelling. The more you write, the more you understand how to tell a story. So
yeah. And
yeah.
that's a fact. It's exponentially grown. So definitely don't get discouraged after the first book if you don't get, you know, don't get any leeway there.
Listen,
Keep going.
yeah, my first query, first of all, I queried a first draft, had no idea how to write a query. It did not talk about the stakes, did not talk about the conflict. I barely mentioned my character. It was all world building.
Ugh.
And I mean, I'm still embarrassed when I think about it. I'm like, that was my first draft. It didn't have a plot. I had no
Yeah.
plot.
Yeah.
And I was so excited. I wanted to just get it out there. I was so thrilled. And now when I look at it, I'm like, oh my God, that's so embarrassing.
Yeah, you'll be fine. It's not that big of a deal, you know?
Oh yeah, that was my first book. That was the very first one. I have
Yeah.
learned since then. I've taken some classes and I've worked with editors, and now I'm like, oh my God, that's embarrassing. But you know what? I'm sure. I actually had a really nice agent. She was super gracious, and she was the one that told me that she encourages debut authors to get critique partners and beta readers, which I didn't even know about. And I remember like looking it up because I was like, what's that?
Yeah.
I mean, that's how green I was. But yeah, so
I was in the same boat at the same
yeah.
time. Like my first query was awful and embarrassing. So it is what it is. Like you have to learn somewhere, you have to start somewhere. You know what I mean?
Exactly, right?
So
I
it's
mean,
not a big deal.
failure, exactly. And failure is never trying.
Dear agent, I'm seeking representation for Redacted, a 65K word YA paranormal mystery standalone novel with elements of the deadly competition from Maggie Fuston's Cruel Illusions meets Remember Me by Christopher Pike. Blank is when a dead teen cheats her way into the underworld games for a chance to return to the land of the living for 24 hours. So there I'm seeing how you're putting the comparable titles in the beginning there. So
Yeah.
it looks a lot better that way. I might have to take that for myself. All right, on to the next. All right, the last thing 17-year-old Lorna Michaels remembers is the prank she and her boyfriend played on a girl at a Halloween party. Now she's dead and living in the underworld with her aunt she barely knows, unable to accept her death with no memory of how she died. Thankfully for Lorna, the underworld hosts games every year where a winner gets to return to the land of the living for 24 hours. And Lorna wants to go back to find out how she died and see her boyfriend one more time. Lorna cheats her way into the games where she must compete against 5 other players in 5 games. But she finds herself in the hands of fate, as fate decides who the ultimate winner will be. Each contestant has a chance of convincing fate they're the only ones who should be chosen to return. If they can't, their soul will be eliminated into oblivion. Playing the games, Lorna learns about the contestants and their reasons, some more compelling than others. If Lorna can't convince fate her reason is worthy enough to return to the land of the living, she will be obliviated and never know what happened to her that Halloween night. I live in California and host the Two Writers Walk Into a Bar podcast. That's us. With my critique partner. This is my first novel. Thank you for your time and consideration. And then, respectfully, A.B. Ruiz.
And I
All
just
right.
realized that I didn't give you the updated query letter. I took out obliviated because that's not a word. I
Oh,
changed it
okay.
to exterminated. I think I was like into Harry Potter.
Well, it should be. I like
Well, I
Obliviated.
yeah. Well, okay. I think I changed it to exterminated, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, definitely you've been learning and reading how to write queries because your query is pretty spot on with spelling out the stakes and telling you exactly what your character wants, exactly what she needs to do, and what stands in her way. Um,
Yeah.
so from that point, and it's short to the sweet and sweet to the point. Let's see. It's a lot shorter than mine, which is long and drawn out. It's nice.
Well,
It's to
no,
the
your
point.
your book is a lot longer than mine, but yeah.
It is. It is. But I definitely see where um, I like the tight, nicely packed, compact or whatever sentences, paragraphs. Um, it just reads a lot better that way. It's to the point. Let's see. Yeah. So reading over this, I'm not really seeing anything that you could actually change very much, except for obliviate, possibly, or
Yes.
whatever the word was.
Yeah.
Um, you've gotten
I
so much better, like
yes.
immensely.
I've taken some classes too, and I did a lot of research. But yes, basically, what you want to do is your first paragraph needs to be about your main character, and this is the first paragraph. I mean, after you are, approach the agent, like this is what I'm querying, whatever I'm seeking representation. You want to put a hook in there if you can. I do have a hook. Believe my hook is 17-year-old teen. Can't remember how she died, and I can't remember how I worded it. I should have printed mine out. But basically,
Um,
like I
yeah, it's the last thing 17-year-old Lorna Michael remembers is the prank she and her boyfriend played on the girl at a Halloween party. Now she's dead and living in the underworld with her aunt she barely knows.
so I believe it's in the first paragraph where I talk about the comps. It's that last sentence.
Okay. Is when a dead teen cheats her way into the underworld games for a chance to return to the land of the living for
Right.
24 hours.
So I'm hoping that's my hook so that when
Yeah.
the agent reads that, she knows exactly what's it about before going into the query where I talk about what she wants, why,
Yes.
and the main conflict and the stakes. The conflict is she has to go up against other people, and she has to convince fate. So one thing that I do want to mention, and I want to share this with you guys. This is something that I do, and you don't have to do this. It's just if whoever's listening, you're like, hey, that actually I kind of like that idea. Great. What I usually do is so I start my story, um, and when I get after I do like the second chapter, I go into my query and I start writing the query. And the reason why I do that is because I can see immediately what I need to add through as the story goes. So like when I first started writing this, I did not have the element of the fate. And so when I was writing my query letter, I was like, what is the stake here for my character? Right. And so I knew by when I couldn't answer that in my query, I knew it was missing in my book. So I had to add that extra element. And then I was able to get that third paragraph of the stakes, because the stake is if she doesn't win, she's going to be exterminated and there is no afterlife for her. So if that's something that sounds like appealing for you, I know it has helped me. And I did that in the last two books I wrote because it helped me to see what was missing in my manuscript. So, and then I was able to adjust my story accordingly, obviously. So that's one of the things I do is I start my query letter pretty much right away. And that just helps move me where I need to go.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
I
and you know
didn't
what?
know that.
It's not for everybody because some people, just like you have like plotters and you have pantsers, you know, everybody just does their thing differently. For me, that's what works. And if you're, I don't know if that sounds appealing to you and you're like, hey, that sounds fine. I know there's a lot of writers that do that. I know there's a lot of writers that don't. So it's not, you know, it's just an idea. It's just an alternative way of doing things. Because I
Yeah.
know yours is different. You do things differently, and that's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I
Yeah,
I wait till the very end and then I just slap it together.
yeah. Well, it's
Hope
good
it
though
works
because
out.
yeah, because you got all. I mean, you have all the elements there. You just kind of have to just, you know, make it a little tighter. But yeah,
Edit it down, yeah.
yeah.
No,
So
I really like your query though. Like it's really tight, like perfect. Like that's exactly how it should be.
I
You
hope it gets me something, Ken. Listen.
you've learned a lot. That's awesome.
Yeah, I kind of broke it down. I know there should be like 3 paragraphs. Like I said, first paragraph is introduce your main character. What do they want? What's getting in the way? Also, that emotional wound. Like my character, she can't remember how she died.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that's like pushing her into wanting to go into the games. Obviously, 'cause she has a chance to
Yeah.
figure out how she died. Plus, you know, as a teenager, she's gonna want to go back and see her boyfriend. I feel like
For
I feel like
sure.
that would
Yeah.
work. And then your second paragraph should be the conflict, introduce the conflict, and show how it affects your main character and why they got to get involved. And then, of course, the third paragraph is the stakes. What is at risk? What is the thing that's going to happen to them if they don't do this thing, you know? And then, of course,
Yeah.
and in your bio. So, yeah, that's the breakdown, guys. I hope that you know, that was helpful. Um, and Ken, obviously, you know, he's written other query letters before, but like he said, he didn't just write this.
Yes.
Just kidding.
Yes. Yeah, I
No,
slapped it together. But yeah, like yours is perfect. That's so cool. Like it's so nice to see you get that formula down perfect. So
yeah,
yeah, really
well,
impressed.
yeah, it took me some doing, but I got it, and it is possible. Obviously, you know, um, we won't know until I start getting some interest. Right now, like I said, I've only been querying it for
Yeah.
about a week. But yeah, so that's kind of my breakdown, how I do it, and hopefully you guys can see, like, you know, we're not when you send us your query letters, you know, we're not going to tear you down, we're not going to like beat you up over it. We just kind of want to be helpful and just we know what it feels like to have our query letters read. We know what it feels like to try to write one.
Yeah.
It's really hard, you know, it's a difficult thing to do.
It's a completely different skill set than to actually
Yes.
writing, which is crazy.
Yes, I remember my first career letter. I had no clue. I don't even know where to start. Like, how do I do this?
Yeah.
You know, obviously, you know, yeah. And I do think that I know for me, sometimes it's hard to because we spend so much time in world building. I mean, I have world building in this book as well, obviously, because you know, there's not really like an underworld games. At least I don't think so,
That
but I
we
won't
know
know
of.
that way.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, so you guys, if you're interested, send us your queries and we'll take a look at them. We will redact your title and any personal information. Also, you can find us on social media. And if you guys are comfortable with that, you can share your social media with us and we will also share that on air. So, like, you can find me on Instagram under AB underscore read books. That's REED books. And Ken, I know you're on Instagram as well, right?
Yeah, I'm on there as author Ken Snyder. I changed my tag recently.
Okay. Oh, perfect. Yeah.
And
So
on
follow
Reddit,
us.
I have a subreddit called author Ken Snyder also. You
Oh,
can check
nice.
out. Yeah. I
All
started
right,
pretty
cool.
recently. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. So follow, you can follow our personal pages. Of course, you can follow our podcast pages. We do have an Instagram set up under the name of our podcast, as well as a Twitter and a YouTube. And our YouTube episodes they will air a day after the podcast. So this is going to air Wednesday, and then the YouTube will be on Thursday. All right, so we want to talk about my weakness, I guess. What would you call it?
Um
um,
yeah, I don't know.
yeah. So I always send Ken my first draft, just because Ken has such a keen eye for detail. And your first draft, like I don't know about you, Ken, but I just like throw up and just throw it in there. Like just start
Yeah,
typing. It reads like shit, whatever. Just trying to get through the scene. And one thing that Ken is always like, I love it when he critiques my chapters because he helps me to see those details that I miss. What we like to call sharp specifics. So, for example, I had a scene where it was like an action scene and I was trying to rush through it. And he was like, go into description, right? Go into detail, tell us more about where they're at, right?
yeah.
The scene with the when they're setting up the trap.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, so basically, a lot of people, a lot of newer writers too, I've critiqued, like, over 1,000,000 words on critiquematch.com, and I've seen a
A
lot of
plug.
different writers. Yes, a plug. I've gone through I don't even know how many partners that I've just been testing out when I first started, and the biggest thing I noticed is most of them do not go deep enough. They don't live in the moment long enough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, everything's just a little shallow. It's like right on the surface. You'll be like, your character walks here, he does this, his heart beats fast, he feels this. But you really need to layer it in, like all five senses. You
hmm
got to nail
Emotions, the sense, all the sensory.
emotion,
Yeah.
everything around them. It's almost like when I'm writing, I act like I am physically there. I envision myself standing where my character's standing,
Yeah.
and I'm going to describe everything I see, feel, hear,
Right, like,
sound.
for
Yeah.
example, I had written, I think, where she picks up, like, a pitchfork or something, and Can was like, "Well, how does it feel in her hand? Is it
Yes.
heavy? Is it" and I was just like, "Yeah, okay, that's good," it's like, was it heavy for her? Was it clumsy? Was it, whatever, right? So, like, me writing, she picked up this pitchfork, and he was like, "Let's feel it in her hands. What does it
Yes.
feel like?"
Did she
So,
get splinters? Is the head loose? You know what I mean? Like, is it rusty? I wanna know these things. This is what readers love to know is the fine
right.
details.
The
Yeah.
sharp specifics. And so
Yep.
every time when Ken points that out to me, I'm like, oh, duh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, s- so and again, like you said, the sharp specifics is why we're reading. And I know, and I will say that's usually my first draft. I try to catch it when I go into the edits. But again, we've talked about this on our trailer, where we get so into our story that it's hard to see those flaws, right? It's hard for us to sort of pull out and be able to look at it in a wide lens, so to speak, which is
Yes.
why it's so important to have a critique partner. And if you're lucky like me, have a critique partner like Ken, who really focuses on those details. It's like, you know, a balance for me because I'm always like quick, get through it, and then Ken's like, wait, slow it down, show me more. I want to know more, type of
Yes.
thing. So which is why we read, and he's right.
Yeah, that's the key to everything. Like, just expand everything. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard to explain really with the words. Um,
But plus too, because here's the thing, it's like it's a lot easier to take away than to add, which is where I'm struggling at right now, right? Like
yes.
when I first finished this draft, I think was like 58,000 words, which is kind of on the low end for a young adult, but like, it'd be better if I could get it up higher, obviously, right?
Yes.
So I've been struggling with adding on, right? But it's a lot easier to subtract than to add on. And so I something that I'm learning and something I'm trying to hopefully be able to do that in my next first draft is to kind of focus on some of those details as I write because I feel like it would really cut down the editing process too later on if I just
Oh,
was a
it'd
little bit
make your life
more.
so much better.
Yeah, because right now I'm struggling like okay, so yeah, it's a wooden handle.
Yes. That's the thing, if you do a very fast first draft, you're gonna have a laborious edit.
Yes, and that is
So,
me
it's
right
a
now.
balance. It's a balance, you know what I mean? Like, that's why it's taken me so long, is because I'm trying to learn from my own mistakes in the past where I hated long edits, you know, it took me 2 months to edit Felina Reyes,
Yes.
which was my previous work,
Mhm.
and it shouldn't take you that long if you write it properly, which I
Right.
didn't,
The
you
first
know?
draft, yeah.
The first draft should at least, you know, even if you go overboard, you can always subtract, like you were saying. You can
Mhm.
always take away.
It's
Like, you
always
can go
easier.
down to the ants crawling on the floor, like, you could even go
Really?
super crazy if you wanted to. Go super in depth, and you can cut that easy. It's as easy as highlight, delete, cool.
Right.
But adding
Or
adding is hard as hell.
it's especially we both work full time,
Sure.
and so it's hard for me to, after working all day, to sit in front of my computer and just solely like pour everything that I am into these pages so that I can elaborate on these scenes. It's like
Yes.
I'm sitting here just like, why didn't I do this the first time around?
Oh, absolutely. I regretted it too with Felina. I know exactly how painful it is for you right now.
It
'Cause
is. It's so
yes,
horrible.
because 'cause you're basically doing, like, double the work now because you have to go through and literally flesh out, you know,
Every
everything,
scene, every
everything.
scene,
Yes,
because I was just so fast. He jumped. It's
yes.
like,
Yes, he like,
jumped where?
he
From what?
jumped.
What was the detail that he got there?
Yes,
I don't know.
exactly.
Just
There's
kidding.
so many things. Like, I wanna write some examples maybe next pod and,
Okay.
really go through them and really show how you can flesh out and go super
Oh, I
crazy
love that.
from
Yes,
yeah,
I
so that
think
would be
that,
really cool, I think.
yeah, that'll be like a part two on our sharp specific. That way you guys get
Yeah,
some examples of what we're talking about instead of just like,
exactly.
rambling
Yeah,
on. Sorry.
but the no, you're good, but the basic is there's layers to an onion. Writing is, you know, an onion, and a lot of beginning writers just write the surface, the first 2 layers, you know what I mean? And it never goes far enough. You need to live in the moments. People wanna be in that moment, you know? A lot of people try to jump plot point to plot point, like, oh, he was on a train and then he jumped out into a forest and then he ran down a river. You know, we want to
But
know
we're
the
missing
train.
all of that in between.
Yes,
Right.
we need
Yeah.
the clack of the train wheels, the smell of the smoke if it's a steam engine or whatever the hell. You know what I mean? You want every
The
sensory
five
detail in
cents.
there.
Yes. I
Yeah.
love, yes.
That's
You're
why
so
my
right.
book's exploding to 120,000 plus, is because I'm actually living in those moments now,
I love
and it
that. I love that.
begs it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And writing, before I started really writing like full time and really dedicating to writing, I never realized how much is involved in writing a story. Like, it's
Oh,
not just a character doing stuff. Like, you have to have interiority, not only, and a plot. Obviously, you have to have a
yeah.
plot. There has to be stakes. There has to be a subplot. The subplot, that if you don't have a subplot in your book, I mean, I don't know. You got to have
Yeah.
subplots, because the subplots are just kind of those things that sort of like are derailing your character in a way, but also getting to know your character. One thing you mentioned was a lot of readers, and I do this when I read a book. I put myself in as the main character. So, and I think as a writer, I forgot that. So shame on me, because I need to remind myself that as a reader, sometimes, well, I don't know about you, Ken, but I always picture myself as the main character. Like, I see myself doing those things. That's what I love
Yeah.
about reading, because it's so cool. Like, I would never be able to do this in real life, but it's cool
Yeah.
to be able to, like, that fantasy of being able to do it in a book, right?
For sure.
So I think I'm going to remember that this week as I'm editing, and sort of just like picture myself as the character, and think, how would I envision this, or what am I seeing as a character? And hopefully we'll be
Yeah.
able to get a better chapter to you.
Yeah, it's almost like acting, you know what I mean, while you're
Right.
writing. You're almost like an actor. Like, I'm glad nobody sees me write because when I'm writing an angry scene, I scowl, you know what I mean? Like,
You're like,
I have to. I'm like, "Ugh," and when and I smile when it's a happy scene or
I don't know. I feel
uh,
like people would want to see that. I feel like if you had a
no.
video recording you, like, you're like, they're gonna be like, oh, he's writing an angry scene or whatever.
I
Yeah.
I do too. I catch myself doing it. I'll get ready to write like an angry line and I find myself grimacing. But yeah. Yeah,
That's so
like, I
funny.
live in it, yeah. I don't know. It's almost like
It
acting, it really is almost like that, but through your fingers, like, I don't know, it's hard to explain.
Well,
It's a
it's I
difficult
mean,
thing.
no, it makes sense because you're sort of putting that emotion
Yeah,
into the story, right? You kinda have to feel
yeah,
it like an actor, like you're saying, that has to
yeah,
feel that emotion as they're doing the scene. It's kinda the same thing, but you're just writing it you're typing it down, right?
yeah,
So, I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense. I will say with this book, I was so eager to just get it over with. I wanted to hurry up because I have this like thing in my head where like I want to be published this year.
yeah,
So like I want to be published this year, which means I have to finish this book, edit it, and query before the end of the year. So hopefully to give my if I get an agent or when I get an agent,
yes,
that they have time to go out on submission and get that contract before the end of the year. So and that's just my own it's my own like deadline for myself. And
I'm right
so
there with you.
yeah. It's hard, it's hard. So, I mean, I started writing in, fully started writing in 2017, when I got an idea for a book. I mean, I've always written. One day I found an old flash drive where I had like 5 different stories that I started and never finished. And
Ah,
then, but in 2017 was when I really, really was like dedicating, like, this is what I want to do. This is
yeah,
I love writing. I love this. So, um, all right, guys. So we hope that you guys, we hope this is helpful, right? Because we just want our whole goal here is to learn together, and to be able to share what we have learned. We know we're not published authors yet. Ken is published, but we're not published authors yet, and that's our end goal here, but
yeah,
we have learned a lot over the way, and we just want to share that with you guys, and hopefully we can all grow together and celebrate each other's victories when we do get those agents, when we do get published. We just want to be encouraging, and for me personally, I don't mind talking about my flaws as a writer. I'm not a perfect writer. I do have flaws. I'm still learning, and I'm so thankful for Ken because he's able to like see shit that I can't see.
yeah. Same for me. I'm not perfect at all, and you help me make my work 1,000 times better.
I feel
Um,
like you were always there though. Like I feel like I didn't do much to help you.
no, you definitely did, for sure.
A little
Like,
bit. Well,
m remember the George R. R. Martin descriptions? Yeah, and,
I always think about that and I'm like, I cringe every time. I'm like, man, honestly, I'm glad that you stuck with me because
yeah, I got thick skin.
I
I'm
strong
here to
armed
get
you into
better. Yeah,
yes, same too. And that was why
yeah,
I mean, critiquematch.com, you guys, if you, I mean, we talk about critiquematch.com, and it's a free website, super free, and you go. Honestly, Ken's like my only critique partner. I have like a couple other ones, but they like disappeared on me. I don't know, and that I think as writers, you're gonna make writer friends that just maybe they things happen in life and they quit or they leave, whatever,
yep.
and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But on critiquematch.com, I think Ken is like my only critique partner right now.
Oh, wow.
I
Yeah, I still
know.
have a
I
few, but a lot of them have gone the wayside, like you said, where they've just fell off the map, and I
It
haven't heard
just
from them in years.
disappeared. I haven't heard.
Yeah,
I mean, I sent this story out to one of my other critique partners, and she hasn't responded. And when I went on her profile, I could tell she hasn't queried anything in a long time. I'm like, oh, you know.
yeah. Well, this is very difficult to become a published writer is very difficult. A lot of people give up after the first couple books rejections, it's a lot of work to put in,
And the
to keep getting
competition is
rejected.
stiff. I mean, the competition is
Fierce.
insane.
Yeah,
But I will say that uh, from trying to so this is like my fourth book I think I've queried or I'm querying. Yeah, a lot of it has to do with just getting your story in front of that person that's just like, "Ooh, I really like this story." And so the way that I kind of equate it is kind of like when you're querying an agent, It's like when you walk into Barnes and Noble or bookstore, okay, and you see all these books before you, right? You know you're going to want to buy one, maybe two, right? So you're going to go to all these books and you're going to read the back blurb, right? Maybe you'll read the first paragraph. I don't like it. Put it back. Go to the next one. Read the back blurb. I'm not sure, read the first page. No, I don't like it. Put it back. I feel like agents, this is kind of like how it is for agents. They're getting all of these queries and they're reading them and they're saying, like us as readers, like, I like this or I don't. But also then they have the other side of it is they have to be able to know how to sell it because publishing is in the business to make money. So I feel
For
like a
sure.
lot of querying has to do with just luck. Sometimes, I think it just has to be like you just got it in front of the right agent that just really likes your story and is like, I know an editor that I can sell this to.
Yeah, there's definitely an aspect of it to that for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So,
All the
but
famous authors, most of them, if you go through and look, like Stephen King had 100 rejections.
yep.
Brandon Sanderson wrote, I think, 6 books. His sixth book is the one that sold.
Oh,
J.K.
really?
Rowling, yeah, J.K. Rowling got rejected 12 times or some stuff on Harry Potter.
Yeah.
So, like, if Harry Potter gets rejected, by a bunch of people, then there's definitely an element of luck there for sure.
Yes. Oh, for sure. So anyway, we hope that you guys feel comfortable sending us your queries. Like I said, we're not here to tear you down or belittle you or anything like that. We just want to help. We want to help and just grow together and just have fun. Writing is hard and but we can still have fun in the process. Just hanging
Yeah,
out, talking writing. One thing Ken and I can do is talk writing for hours.
hours and hours and hours. I could just yap, yap, yap. But
I
yeah,
told him,
also, go ahead. Sorry.
no, I was just gonna say that I told you I envisioned this podcast as like Ernest Hemingway and like um, oh, Scott Fitzgerald
Yeah, F.
sitting in a
Scott
bar.
Fitzgerald.
F.
Yes,
Scott Fitzgerald sitting in a bar,
yes,
just talking away. What would they be talking about? Writing.
for sure.
Yeah.
But also don't forget first chapters too. If you want to do first
Yes.
chapters,
Mm-hmm.
send those in because I'm much better at critiquing actual like chapters. I'm not as good as at the query, which she's way better at the query than I am, helping people. So, but I could definitely hook you up. Send in those first chapters.
Yeah, I think we were asking for the first 3 pages.
That would
For
be
the first
perfect.
first 3 pages, send us your query and first. We're not going to read the first 3 pages on the podcast.
No,
We're just going to read the query, but what we will do is talk about what we liked in those first pages, what's working, what grabbed our attention, that would hopefully grab the attention of an agent.
or if it did.
So
Yeah,
or if it did, or like what
yeah,
you could, whatever, right? But again, we just want to be helpful with you guys, and we want to celebrate these milestones as we reach them together.
for sure.
So yeah, so that's it. So our next episode is going to drop in 2 weeks. Episode 2 will drop in 2 weeks, and you can send your query letter and your first 3 pages to our email, which is, I think, 2writersinAbar@gmail.com. So again, that's 2writersinAbar@gmail.com, and just put, query to read on air. And then we'll read them and share our critique. So anyway, we hope you guys have a good week. That's the end of this podcast. You want to sign us off, Ken?
See ya. That's all I got.
All right. We'll see you guys in a couple weeks.
Take
Bye.
care.
And that's it for today's episode, friends. We hope you learned something new today. Please follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube under 2 Writers Walk Into a Bar podcast. Our YouTube episodes will upload on Thursdays, the day after the show airs, if you want to watch. And if you want your query letter and the first 3 pages critiqued and read on air by us, send them to our email at 2writersinAbar@gmail.com. Put query on air in the subject line. We will read them on a first come, first served basis. For more information, head to our website, 2writersinabar.com. Remember, we are here to help, inspire, and celebrate. Two Writers Walk Into a Bar podcast is produced by the Brava Media Group.